Back at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for our last batch of interviews before Saturday's spring game. It is Wednesday. I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com along with Stephen Means and Andrew Gillis. And we just met Ohio State's new running backs coach, Carlos Lockyn. Obviously, Ohio State started this spring with Tony Alford still in the running backs job. He leaves for Michigan. Carlos Lockyn is the guy that Ryan Day went out and found through what he called a thorough process, talked to more than a dozen people. Obviously, the thing that jumps right out at you with Carlos Lockyn is the personality, the attitude. I don't know what word you want to use. An intense guy and a guy who has some real strong opinions about how running backs need to be coached and why he might be a better person to do that than most other people. And it felt like today was him sort of asking us to hold him to a really high standard here as far as running back play in the coming years at Ohio State.
Yeah, my reaction is just, okay. We'll see in 6 months, right? I think, to your point, I think he just kind of laid the gauntlet down. Like, this is what I'm about. This is what you should expect from me. This is the standard I want to be at. This is how I'm going to handle this room. He didn't really get asked a lot of recruiting questions, though, because it was a short little window there. But this is how I'm going to do things. And it should produce this. I've done this before. You were asking questions about multiple running backs being involved, and he said, this ain't my first rodeo. That was his exact quote words. So he said a lot of things today that sound good. Right, when you're standing at a podium meeting the media for the first time. And I think now it's just 6 months from now, it's kind of going to be, all right, put your money where your mouth is in that type of situation. I think that's the feel I got from the day is all of this sounds good. Is it going to actually look good when they're playing football in 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, the question I asked him was, hey, how much did you and Ryan Day talk about sort of this unique situation with Henderson and Judkins and how you plan to pursue it? And it immediately became him being kind of defensive and like, yeah, people know, I know people think I've only been around for 3 years, but I get where he's coming from. He has had a very quick rise to get from being basically a high school offensive coordinator to Ohio State running backs coach, Oregon running backs coach before that. I really don't think, though, that the thing that will define Lockyn's Ohio State tenure is what happens this season. Like, a lot of the hay is already in the barn for how well this team is going to run the ball this year with Henderson and Judkins both in place. I'm more intrigued, Andrew, by what you're going to be monitoring here for the coming years as far as can he more consistently bring in top-level talent at running back the way Ohio State expects.
Yeah, this is a weird hire for Ohio State, and not by who they hired or anything like that. It's just a unique situation where you have the best 1-2 punch in the country, and probably, in terms of your running back situation. So you're not going to know anything until, I don't believe, until after this season, because those two guys are going to do what they do in Quinshon and Travion. Then you got to get into the spring, and we don't really see the spring a lot, and the country doesn't really see the spring, and there's not going to be a lot going on. So we might not know kind of what he can do as a coach for like 18 months. Like that, I don't think that that's crazy to say that we might not know for a little while here what's going to happen. But the most interesting thing about recruiting that he said in there was Carlos Lockyn's not a recruiter. He's a relationship builder. And I thought that was really interesting because we're going to find out, because he's got to build some relationships here. It's always tough whenever you lose a coach. You got to rebuild those relationships. So how can he build a relationship with Jordan Davison? How can he build a relationship with Bo Jackson up in Cleveland, Marquise Davis up in Cleveland, or Jeffrey Overton out in Virginia, or anyone, Byron Lewis down south? Like, how can he build these relationships with these guys that you're going to have to start from scratch with some of these guys? So I'm curious to see how that works and how that manifests, because recruiting is a very different operation at some of the steps that he's had. And now that he's at Ohio State, he is expected to be one of the best recruiters in the country, and he better prove it.
Yeah, he takes exception to this thing that he feels happens in college football where the running back coach is just expected to recruit and then bring a guy in and they just throw him out there. He really takes exception to that. He takes a lot of pride in the development side of things. So I think we will know next fall how well that went with guys like James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon and whoever else might come in between now and then. We're going to talk a lot more about this on Buckeye Talk, and get the text 614-350-3315, news and updates from the spring game Saturday right to your phone from cleveland.com.